An election night campaign party shouldn't be this much excitement. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. To give you a taste of what I'm talking about, my buddy Chris Putnam from Dallas Express coming back on. And Chris, you were saying that this is way too much excitement for a normal election night watch party. Let's start with the story of the gunman that showed up.
That was wild, right? So we get there, and I'd say about 30 minutes after it started.
You're too late. You're too late. It's at the Marriott, about a mile from where we're at. It's probably about 7 in the afternoon or 7 in the evening, or I don't know.
It was 7, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't get out there till like right after they took him away. Yeah, so it's at the Marriott, and he has a couple of ballrooms rented. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who's obviously run for Senate now, and so they have a setup there where all the media comes and all the VIPs come and all the supporters come to watch the results come in. And now you start talking about the gunman. Go.
Yeah, so this guy, Antifa type, masked up. I don't know if he's like formally in some Antifa organization or not. That night they were saying that he was potentially recognized as a member of the John Brown Gun Club, which is the same individuals that attacked the Prairieland ICE facility. But he's like loaded with mags. He's unloading ammo, and I didn't see it firsthand. Our mutual friend Alexander Muse on X, who's got a lot of followers, including Elon, he saw it firsthand. Sent us a bunch of crazy pictures, but they got him pretty quick. It's a private event, not advertised. So he found out about it somehow. And, it seems kind of a strange way to go assault a political event just by yourself. And of course, the place was surrounded by Department of Public Safety officers, so he didn't get too far.
Well, did you hear the media excuse it, saying, no, he was just there delivering mayonnaise? What? Just because a guy is covered in a thermal face mask and a heavy hat and big, thick gloves, camo head to toe, to deliver mayonnaise when it's 80 degrees outside, that's not suspicious at all. And they just bought some sort of excuse. I think they just read this online or something, because I haven't seen the evidence that he was there to deliver mayonnaise. Did you hear that explanation?
I haven't, but I'm surprised if any of our friends here in the legacy media covered it at all, because obviously inconvenient to the political narrative. But yeah, that's obviously ridiculous. If anybody saw pictures of this thing, and you can find them on our website at DallasExpress.com. I mean, he looked like, he was there for militaristic reasons.
Yeah, definitely. But there was no harm, no foul. Now, when we got there, I was surprised at how many media cameras were there. It seemed like all the big networks were there. They had a big platform set up in the back of one of the ballrooms that was opposite the stage with the podium and the big backdrop that says Paxton. And that was like everybody: MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, some other people I didn't know. Sky News was there. Tommy Robinson was there.
That was weird, right? There's Tommy Robinson.
Yeah. So are these election parties? This is not the normal turnout, I'm guessing.
No, I mean, well, some of them are like larger in terms of people. This one, of course, is maybe the biggest race in November. I mean, you're flipping potentially a Senate seat, not party to party, but it's pretty unusual for a 20-plus year incumbent to have a challenge like this. And, from a ideological point of view, Cornyn and Paxton couldn't be much different. Thus, I think that's why there's so much attention on it.
All right. So it's a pretty fun party. Thanks for getting me in and whatnot, but let's not have that much excitement next time. Let's have fewer gunmen at the next election party. Can we do that? I'm aiming for 0 is my preferred number of gunmen at my parties.
If I'd known that, I would have brought my own gun, but we were patted down, so
yeah,
there's no way to defend yourself.
Security was pretty good there. All right, let's talk about this Austin terror attack. This happens in our backyard. You are in the media, and you are one of the outlets that will actually admit that this guy was wearing an Allah shirt, an Iran undershirt, had a Quran in his car, had flags in his apartment, and was quite obviously motivated by Muslim terrorism. What does it feel like to turn on these other platforms and have them act like they don't even know that exists?
Well, I'll be honest with you, because I study it every single day. Every time we get, it doesn't even have to be a Muslim terrorist story, but just news that should be reported as it is. Factual, truthful news. And in this case, there's nobody that's like not being intellectually honest that understands that this guy was motivated by Islamic terrorism. Like, period. It's not even a question. And of course, there was a follow-on incident the next night. I believe it was in Cincinnati. Or another one shot up a bar. And so it's par for the course, sadly. but it's what we're used to dealing with every day. And frankly, it's the reason we've been successful because, we'll report these stories that just are not politically convenient for the far left legacy media.
All right, let's move our attention to the Dallas City Hall situation. This is getting interesting because one of our mutual friends, Dallas and Fuego, the guy that's on the opposite end of the political spectrum from him in City Hall is Adam Basil-Dua, and they made a video that Fuego put out earlier this week where they're both criticizing this plan to destroy City Hall and build something else there. And if you have those two guys agreeing on something, that says a lot.
There's other council people as well. Agreed, by the way. That was extraordinary. And it was quite funny, actually. They made it entertaining. But Councilwoman Kara Mendelson represents North Dallas. And of course, they have the Valley View site. And if there's going to be a conversation about potentially the city using city-owned property to retain the Mavericks by doing some kind of deal to keep them here, I think she probably would have wanted to be in the conversation with that site. But this is the dysfunction of 14 single-member districts. It allows both city staff and developers to practice what I call the salami tactic. They slice off the constituencies that they want to suit their agenda and then play them off each other. And in the cases of several of these city council people, they weren't brought in this conversation at all. And as you and I have talked about now for, I think it's actually a couple of months, like I told your audience that this is what was happening when they were literally practicing this charade of like, oh my gosh, we have to have a new city hall because,
jeepers, look at all these repairs. Yeah.
And then of course they come out with this just ridiculous $1 billion number, which is, it's designed to lead you to a conclusion, period. And then the good news is it started getting out, right? Thanks to you in part, others, and about what the real intentions were. And then the Dallas establishment, led by former Mayor Rawlings and some others, start doing op-eds in the Dallas Morning News about how we need to do this. And the problem is, I actually think that there could be a good business case here. Regardless of what you think about the building, and it's celebrated as this I am Pei architected landmark in Dallas. Regardless of what you think about that, whether you think it's ugly or you think it's broken, whether it needs to go, the problem is the process is not transparent. It's dirty. And in my experience as a former elected official, when there's a dirty process, it's going to end up being a dirty deal. And so this should be talked about. It should be understood that the city was lying to its taxpayers and residents to try to pull a fast one over them. And then the next part that happens is with this $1 billion estimate, I think you're the one actually educated me on the fact that to repair Notre Dame, which was almost burned to the ground, was less than $1 billion. They built a Louvre somewhere in the Middle East. I think it was the UAE that was less than $1 billion. And these are like architectural landmarks, global landmarks. And so what they'll do then is when they'll come back and tell you, well, oh, you know what? We're heroes because, it's only going to cost us $500 million to build a new one. Well, what people need to remember here is that facility is paid for. And the last estimate they had to repair it to get it to standards that suited ADA and all these other things was $39 million.
That was the high end. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other element is, as Councilwoman Mendelson pointed out, I think it was last week on X or Twitter, there's nobody there. There was a whole controversy that Dallas and Fuego was also involved in earlier this year. He was trying to understand how many virtual employees the city of Dallas had, and the city staff at the time.
Let me hit pause on this because they're moving forward with this, but we're going to talk about what's on the other side of this. Why are they doing this whole grift, and why are they being this dishonest? We'll continue with Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. It's Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. Now, incumbents took a beating in the primaries. There was a lot of big name incumbents that lost, and it's weird for an incumbent, especially to lose in their own primary. What's going on with that, Chris?
Well, generally, it was a really good night for conservatives in Texas. As you mentioned, there were some surprises. The biggest, of course, Dan Crenshaw. People knew that was possible, but it was decisive. So that was a really interesting one. Of course, Crenshaw, when he first came to Congress, was very popular. And that constituency has just turned on him so hard.
Well, he deserves it.
He does. He's an interesting character. Has a history of kind of these short-tempered bursts in public and yelling at children and all sorts of wild stuff. Yeah, so that was a big one. In primaries a lot of times, and in Texas, particularly in runoffs, by the way, conservatives win and challengers win. That's how Ted Cruz was elected to Senate initially. That was a huge upset at the time when he defeated David Dewhurst for that Senate seat. So it does happen here in Texas in primaries. It kind of depends on what's going on with the mood of the electorate, particularly the further right side of the party, who always show up to these elections, even in low turnout years. And by the way, this wasn't a low turnout for Republicans. I know a lot was made about the fact that I think at the end of the day, 100,000 more Democrats statewide voted in this primary than Republicans. But this is the first time in decades that you had a real legitimate statewide primary race on the Democratic side, a credible one. And that's the reason for a lot of turnout, of course, along with the fact that Democrats are incredibly motivated because they hate Donald Trump and are resisting what's going on with deportation.
How come we didn't see a serious challenge to Governor Greg Abbott? Most Republicans I know gripe about this guy, yet he just skated through.
Look, it's the money. At the end of and regardless of what people who maybe exist in our political echo chamber, or a lot of folks that are very conservative think. I mean, he's been popular, and so you hear a lot of that in the social media echo chamber. And we knew, of course, that it wasn't going to be competitive. I think I set the over under on a Doc Chambers, who's not a credible candidate, at 5%. He actually got 10. So, he did twice as good as like most of us thought he would. But no, I mean, Abbott's sitting on $100 million plus war chest. The money's always hard to beat, particularly in statewide elections. It's just incredibly difficult. And the truth is, for a lot of elections, generally the money's hard to beat. In the Cornyn-Paxton race, Cornyn has $100 million committed. Some people said he spent $100 million. I haven't seen that data yet. Paxton, millions, but nothing remotely close to that. And that, I'm positive, was a huge reason that the margins there were much, much tighter than people expected. People expected Paxton to do at least 5 to 10% better this round. And Cornyn spent just a ton of money for months now to make sure that didn't happen.
Well, talk about the weird situation we're in now. We're sort of in a Trump limbo where he says he's going to make an endorsement in that race, and he strongly encourages the other guy to drop out so we don't have an internal firing squad. What's going on with that, Chris? Is he trying to extract something in return for an endorsement? Why not just say who you like now?
Well, I think there's multiple things going on, and James, you know this personally, but I had personal experience with this. I ran a big race for Congress in 2020. It was the biggest in the country, the highest profile, and I was the Trump candidate. And in the middle of the cycle, Trump was impeached, and as a result of that impeachment, he needed every vote in the House. And Kevin McCarthy talked him into endorsing every incumbent, including my opponent, who was very much a never Trumper, very public never Trumper. And so Trump does things that are politically expedient. And, my thesis, and I talked to some of the Paxton people that night, were what if he needs something from Senator Cornyn between now and this runoff? And of course, the SAVE Act is hanging out there. And so a lot of people feel like there's some deal making going on along those lines. And I don't know if you saw Paxton's post today, but he basically said if they will pass the SAVE Act, they will the filibuster, if they'll get rid of the filibuster, vote on the SAVE Act, pass the SAVE Act, I'll step down. That's pretty clever. That puts a lot of pressure on John Thune and, Senator Cornyn. So, again, what I always explain to people about the president endorsements, because as you know, they're often controversial, is it's transactional for him. It's not necessarily ideological.
Sure.
And that gets a lot of voters, particularly these hardcore MAGA voters, confused at times, but that's what it is.
So let's talk about the weird situation on the other side of the aisle. Tallarico beat Crockett. I was surprised. I thought her raging popularity and media attention could overwhelm that, because I feel like Tallarico was what the establishment wanted, what the Democrat Party wanted, capital D. Not necessarily Democrat voters in my orbit, but are you surprised he won?
Well, I actually predicted he would.
Yeah, so I guess not.
Now, it was close. And, this is actually very similar to the situation with Chip Roy, who's expected to perform much better. Almost didn't make the runoff. I think they both relied on traditional electoral tactics, particularly when you have the kind of name ID that those two individuals have. And look, Jasmine didn't spend a lot of money, and she's one of the best fundraisers in American Congress. She has national presence, national media coverage, national small donor network, and she didn't do the same things in this race that she normally does to fundraise effectively. And then on top of that, she wasn't in the field that much. And Talarico was out there hustling. I'll give him that. He had a lot of money behind him. But it took until that Colbert thing, or Colbert, sorry, Colbert thing, where he and Colbert got together, Talarico.
That was such a scam.
That was the difference.
Yeah.
I've looked at the numbers. That was the difference. He raised $2.5 million that weekend, boosted his name ID and profile, and it was a lie. And they knew it was a lie. And of course, the second they issued the lie, the line Legacy Media comes right behind it, amplifying it. And that was the delta. And
Trump shut down my interview. No, he didn't. It was
total nonsense. It was an equal time thing. They didn't want to platform Jasmine. And look, you can be this skeptical because let me tell you something. These people are this devious.
Oh, no
it
kidding.
May have been done that way on purpose, that he was never going to air that interview. It was literally just to create the situation.
All right, real quick. I only have 1 minute left. This Tony Gonzalez situation, the Republican congressman is in a runoff in his district in South Texas. He's the guy that had an affair with the staffer. She ended up setting herself on fire. But he did an interview with Joe Pags last night, which you would have heard on WBAP if you were listening. But he says the time between when they split up, when they cut off all contact, she didn't work with him anymore, they broke off the affair, was June of 2024. She didn't kill herself until September of 2025. So are these things even related? Because it's certainly been reported like that it was a cause and effect.
That's like trying to believe Bill Clinton testifying from an Epstein hearing. Like, don't believe a thing this guy's saying. And look, at the end of the day, this isn't just an adultery situation, right? Because most voters don't care. They just don't.
Nor should they.
That's where we are now. But like, at the end of the day, this guy groomed an employee and emotionally damaged her to the point that she was willing to kill herself in an awful, awful way. This guy, he has no shame. He should have already left this race. It's embarrassing for Texas. It should be embarrassing to him, but it's clearly not. He's gotten a lot of pressure, out of D.C. The fact that this guy's even attempting to run this runoff is obscene to me.
Well, yeah, but also if he drops out, he's kind of admitting guilt, and there's some real crimes there with the. There's now an ethics hearing or something. Chris Putnam, Dallas Express. Thank you very much for your insight, sir.
You bet. Take care.